Hi everyone, my name is Becky and I am the communications manager here at Clore Leadership. I'm a white woman in my late 30s with wavy short red hair and freckles, wearing a white t-shirt and sat in my study at home. As part of our 21st anniversary at Clore Leadership, I am delighted to welcome two of our Clore Fellows. We have Deanna Rodger, who is one of our most recent fellows at Clore 19 and has been with us this past year and will graduate this autumn. And we also have Nick Merriman, who is a Clore 1 and part of our very first cohort all of those years ago. So I'm now going to hand over to Deanna and Nick, and they're going to discuss all things fellowship, arts and cultural leadership, and what the future looks like for leaders in the sector. So Deanna, I will hand that over to you.
Thank you so much, Becky. Hello, everyone. I'm Deanna Rodger. I'm a mixed heritage woman of Jamaican and Scottish heritage, and I've got black hair that's pulled back into a low bun and wearing a black top, and I'm in my studio office, don't know what it's called yet, with a bookcase behind me. And yeah, I'm Clore 19. I was part of Clore 19. My creative practice is in writing. I'm a poet and have been for the past 17 years. And that's taken me all across the world and put me into all sorts of situations where I've been able to kind of form an idea of leadership and cultural leadership and ideas around how I might lend my skills to kind of mapping out something to go forward into the future. And I'm delighted to be here to learn from Nick Merriman. Hi, Nick.
Okay, well, hi everybody, and thanks, Deanna. Yeah, I'm Nick Merriman. I'm a white, I suppose, middle-aged, if not elderly male with dark hair, greying at the sides, black frame glasses, blue and white short sleeve shirt, and I'm sitting also in my home office, which appropriately, given my background in heritage, has some beams above it in the background. Yeah, I've spent most of my professional life in museums and heritage, trained as an archaeologist. The thread that's been running throughout my career really has been opening up access to the past and to heritage for people who don't naturally see it as part of their life. And you know, I'm sure that's something we'll begin to touch on. And yeah, I can't believe it was 20 years ago this year that I first started the Clore Leadership program.
Right, should we dive in to it?
Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned just before we kind of started recording, 5 months in, congratulations on your new appointment as CE of English Heritage. It's massive. There's 400 historic buildings. It's at the heart of local communities, from what I understand. That's really how it moves its way through. But it's also such a young charity. It's only 8 years old. And so I guess the first question is, like, how often do you reflect on your own past and find the tracks which led you to where you are now? So, like, what was 8-year-old Nick thinking his life would become?
Well, probably when I was 8, like many 8-year-old boys, I thought I would be a professional footballer, but then realized that, you know, actually you do need a bit more talent than I had. So one of the things that I did when I was young with my parents was we actually didn't visit museums and art galleries because we thought they were a bit exclusive. But we did really enjoy visiting old ruined castles and things because they were like kind of adventure playgrounds. You could clamber all over the walls, and they were kind of playgrounds for the imagination as well. So I did end up going in. So that sort of sparked my interest in the past, really, encouraged by my dad, who used to take me around junk shops in Birmingham and so on. they both left school at 16. It's not particularly sort of academic background, but I suppose I was quite, reasonably intelligent, and went to in those days, there was a school in Birmingham you go to, and if you pass the entrance exam, and I got a good education and ended up studying archaeology, went into museums, and then finally, and before that, actually, when I was 16, I started going on Saturdays to digs on a local Roman site because I was interested in finding stuff. And it just so happens that that site is called Wall, near Lichfield in Staffordshire, and Kenilworth Castle and some of the other sort of sites I used to clamber around as a kid are all under English Heritage's care. So I think the 8-year-old me would have been absolutely amazed that the grown-up me has ended up sort of being in charge of this big array of historic sites. But it's absolutely brilliant to sort of make those connections with the enthusiasms I had as a boy, with the ability to try and open up these sites to wide audiences today.
Absolutely. And a lot of your work before this appointment, kind of the books that you created when you're part of Museum of London, had community consultation right at the heart of them. That comes from, I guess, being this 8-year-old who's able to clamber and have these really tactile experiences. But like, how do you see museums taking that forward into this time and age of communities being at the heart of things?
Yeah. Well, I suppose as I sort of said, I was very struck by my parents self-excluding themselves from participation in higher culture. And eventually, when I went on to do a PhD, it was actually looking at why people didn't visit museums and heritage sites. So looking at the barriers to participation, which are mainly in the mind, they're cultural ones. That's why I said self-exclusion, because people say it's not for the likes of me. I can't go to those posh art galleries and things like that. And my PhD work actually did a big survey of the British population, which shows that everybody's interested in the past. Sometimes it's just the family past or perhaps a local past. But, almost nobody would say, I haven't got any interest in anything to do with yesterday and earlier. But the sort of more official versions of the past are very partial and excluded. So I suppose the thing that I've tried to do through my career, starting at the Museum of London and now at English Heritage, is dismantle some of those barriers and say, and begin to tell a more inclusive narrative. So English Heritage is, I sometimes say, it's a bit like a dispersed Museum of England with these 400 sites right across the country where people actually live and sort of where history happened, at the sites. The ability to connect with local communities, because everyone is local. Even if your family heritage is from the Caribbean, say, everyone lives locally and has some passing interest in the local surroundings. And so that ability to connect local and personal and family, often with much bigger, sometimes global narratives, is at the heart of what I'd like to see as sort of more inclusive narratives of what it means to be English or British.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, I've got like 2 questions that was into 2 very different directions. One, I guess I'll throw them both out and you can pick. But one was kind of like, I'm interested in the relationship England currently has with its past, and how we, I guess, part of our journey of cultural leadership, mine a bit more recent than yours, is like thinking about what is in the future, and what might happen in the next 20 years, and how leadership can really kind of hold spaces for people to explore culture. But this, I guess, sorry, it's a big question. There's so many thoughts firing through my brain. But just thinking about the changing demographics of this country, and how to pull people into the history of this country, but also to how to kind of sorry, you probably want to edit this bit out, Becky, where I'm just like, wow, there's so many. But how well we know our own English history and the role of these sites or like kind of leadership in order to really hold us in a space of reflection and appreciation and also atonement, I guess. And the other question, which is, I guess, more in line with this interview, was the impact of the fellowship on you feeling able to step into this massive role, which holds the history of this country. It's probably a cleaner question.
Yeah, well, perhaps I'll answer the question about the kind of impact of the Clore program, and we can kind of then explore further.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, yeah, it was more than 20 years ago, which is a lot of water under the bridge. But going back to, I'd been working in various institutions, including actually when I applied, I was actually teaching museum and heritage studies at UCL, University College London, which is all, of course, about developing and preparing people. But I kind of realized after a while I'd neglected my own development, and I wanted to move. I felt I'd moved from a curatorial position at the Museum of London to an academic position at UCL, but I felt I wanted to sort of, I had something to offer in terms of leadership and running something. But I realized I'd held myself back because I always thought it was to do with, I didn't know about enough stuff. And that's probably my own academic practice. I didn't know enough about how you negotiate with trade unions. And I didn't know enough about budgets and spreadsheets and all that. So, and, you know, what about these tricky HR? So I felt sort of, I had knowledge gaps. And I was aware that there was nothing really. I think there may have been the program at the University of East Anglia, but apart from that, there was very little in the UK. And there was a good course in America for sort of museum leadership. So as soon as I heard about the Clore program, I thought, this is the one thing I've been waiting for. What I didn't know is that there were about 400 other people, you know, also waiting for it. So anyway, cut a long story short, I applied and I was kind of lucky enough and presumably convincing enough to get in. And of course, the big learning almost immediately was that it wasn't about knowledge. It was about yourself. And that was the big surprise. I thought it's all in big sort of academic stuff. I'll fill in all these gaps and then I'll be really, you know, qualified to be a leader. Where it's much more about, you know, values and who you are as a person and how you would want to lead. And actually, the other thing was a tremendous relief, really, because I'd probably espoused to this old-fashioned model of heroic leadership, where you had to sort of be a perfect person and know everything and be supremely confident about everything and sort of lead the charge, everyone following you. The big revelation for me of doing the whole program was that, of course, it's all about, you know, working in a team. And I realized I didn't have to be the expert on finance because you just had to have a good finance person or an expert HR person. So that's where it was a tremendous relief. So I think what the Clore program did above all was to actually give me the confidence to put myself forward for leadership positions, imperfect though I was. But knowing a bit more about what kind of leadership I could offer. And of course, the Clore model, which is the sort of, I think the standard one now, is that it's all about collaboration, and it's about sort of a peer group leading and setting values and a tone of voice and, you know, being really clear about mission and so on. I think that was the thing that had the biggest impact on me. And I was able then to have the sort of courage and confidence to put myself forward for my first leadership role, which was director of Manchester Museum, and yeah, got it. So, and actually I realized that I quite liked being a leader and taking responsibility for things, but also having the satisfaction of seeing things play out, you know, actually implementing stuff and seeing change happen, whether it's in programming or audiences or whatever. But that's probably enough burbling from me. How have you found, because you're kind of just in the throes of finishing now, does that echo with you, or has it changed a lot over the last 20 years?
And it's so lovely to hear that that's that's still running through, and it's not just kind of that there was a real innovation of leadership way back then, which is still being held really, like, kind of, it's super important. It's like, we don't want you to, we did kind of some finance stuff, but it really was like, who are you, authentic leadership and mission and values, and really digging in, which I guess similar to what you were saying of my journey. I kind of had a very fixed idea of, I'm going to go in and it's going to kind of tick these boxes and give me an authority on creative facilitation, and then I'll be made and everything will be fine. And I think I was definitely looking for something a bit, or I thought I was looking for something harder to complement the soft skills of being a poet, kind of to give me some, I guess, validity. And fortunately, the team selected me through that and were like, she's got something that I don't think I even realized, and I'm still in the process of discovering. And I realized that I'd really neglected my own development as a writer, as a creator of ideas, and kind of not chosen the easier path, building something, anything easy, but the safer path, I guess, which was to try and build a program rather than remembering how I got to where I am, which was through writing things and saying things on stages and building groups and events and community around kind of bonkers poetry ideas. And so it's been really quite scary to return, to kind of come back to myself. And I think for me, I'm a parent as you are, but I think I didn't chart any transformation of the new person I've become.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been, I'm like, oh God, I've got so much work to do to really figure out who I am as this 34-year-old with children in a new city. So I no longer live in London, which is where I was kind of born and bred and got a lot of kind of the pollution of London in me. I'm in Bristol, which is a different environment. And to, I guess, not take that for granted, that space of reflection that the Clore has given and continues to offer through, I mean, even through this.
Yeah. I think most of us found it signaled a big change in our lives, in the sense that many people found it difficult to return back to their previous roles. I mean, many do. I mean, some of them are still in basically their own companies that they run, but they've changed as people. But I kind of observed that the sort of commonest thing was people to do this amazing Clore experience and then go back to their previous role thinking this isn't enough. So a lot of people moved. So I moved to Manchester Museum sort of within months, you know, more or less the sort of first thing that came along was the sort of perfect thing for me. And along with that, and I'm sure you'll probably echo this, the friends you make, the network you make within that very intensive period of the Clore Fellowship stays with you. Obviously, this is the 20th year, and we had a 20th anniversary reunion, and we had about 16 people and about sort of 3 or 4 that just couldn't make it for various reasons, all get together over a weekend just about a month ago. And it was fantastic. Many of us sort of see each other quite frequently because we're in broadly the same sort of museums and heritage role. Others we just see very occasionally. So we had another anniversary about 5 years, another reunion about 5 years ago. But it's like when you see old friends, you sort of immediately fall into a sort of easy relationship, and it's really been one of the absolute best things. And also for some people, you know, we're able to be confidants of each other, you know, ask for advice, support, you know, a bit of good, wise counsel. So that's been tremendous. One of the longer lasting effects of the fellowship, I think.
It's amazing. Just the bond feels so strong, kind of, and I think it is because of the process of the transformation that is quite startling. You can't help but just feel like really intimate with this cohort. And but also what I love about kind of and we're kind of still in we're not bedded in yet. But how much I learn about the world, points of view, but also the industries, and is that thing of this collaborative effort of leadership. You don't need to know everything. You can kind of throw something out and receive all this information back that you wouldn't even, for me, I wouldn't even know where to look. And so I just feel so abundant in jokes as well as professional practice.
Yeah.
It's quite something. There's this idea that you had in one of your in the research paper, because you went on to do the research paper, the ACHRC. I should have memorized the acronym.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that changed, because it was kind of compulsory then that you did a research project, and I think that's become optional now.
Yeah, you have to now.
I was kind of coming from an academic background anyway, so I had a sort of question that I wanted to explore.
Yeah, and it was this idea, this philosophy of disposal.
Yeah,
which I love. The like, when I was kind of sinking into it, I haven't read like intimately your the paper, but I found it online, and so I've got it saved. Actually, I've got a couple of your books coming. I was like,
great. Yeah, well, there's this idea, you know, obviously heritage organizations like museums, they are what's called memory institutions, but they get full of stuff. You know, one of the things that's perhaps less well known about museums is that like 95% of the objects are not on show, they're in stores, and they're kind of an archive, you know, they're sort of an archive for the future. And sometimes they're research collections, big scientific collections, which, you know, lots and lots of drawers of insects, not of great public interest, but there's that sort of archival function. But most museums say, well, they're too full, the stores are full. And so I just explored this idea of memory and forgetting. And there's quite a lot of, there's a whole sub-branch of anthropology called the anthropology of memory, and sort of what nations choose to remember and what they choose to forget, and what they commemorate and what becomes part of the national myth and all that sort of thing. And there's also kind of a lot of work in brain research about memory in the brain. Anyway, I read, you know, obviously I'm not an expert, superficially on these things. And I thought, well, what if memory institutions should forget? Because a healthy brain, and I can tell you this becomes easier as you get older, forgets a lot of its stuff. You know, so in order to function, you can't remember everything. It'd be terrible, you know. So you have to have a sort of filter. But museums, you're supposed to, once an object, a painting or something comes in, it's there forever. It's supposed to be there on trust in perpetuity for the public. And so they get clogged up. And so they're not, the sort of ecosystem of memories for memory institutions isn't healthy. So I said, well, why don't we embrace that as a way of thinking about developing a healthy ecosystem for memory institutions, and forgetting would mean disposing from collections. And there was sort of a good academic reception. So we all agree with you, really, absolutely right, totally on the ball. Nobody's done anything about it, because there's no rewards in our system for making things smaller and more sustainable, whether it's collections. So if you think about art galleries, all the reward systems and metrics for art galleries, you build a new wing, you get a load of new big acquisitions, you increase visitors, you increase staff, you increase profile and so on. And that's maybe good, but it doesn't, this model of constant growth in our institutions is not sustainable. And so that one of the things I wasn't really developed when I was thinking about the research paper, but has become bigger, is the literature about degrowth and sustainability, donut economics, where you have a sort of, you know, you don't have a constantly, the idea of growth itself is queried into something about circular economics and sustainability and so on. And if, you know, those now could be bolted on very usefully to the sort of fairly simplistic arguments I was making, I think. But of course, it's very difficult to change reward systems. You know, as I said, nobody ever got promoted from making an institution smaller. And that's our big challenge.
Not yet. Did you kind of seed some of these ideas through the cohort and see how they kind of take fruit, or how people respond to them or think about them in their own practices amongst your cohort?
Yeah, we kind of keep in touch with each other. I mean, people are in very different areas, you know. So as I said, there's a small group who work in museums and heritage, and we sort of bolster each other. I mean, I should have said that, you know, one of the great outcomes of the Clore program was that I met my wife, Maria Balshaw, who now runs Tate. So of course, we're constantly talking about these kinds of issues, and she's just done a book about the future of museums and so on. So we're a sort of very tight little sort of discussion group. But, you know, there were some real pioneers amongst our group. Tom Andrews, who still runs his own sort of company and works for Acevo as well. More than 20 years ago, he was talking about happiness. And we were all sort of looking at him slightly strangely. What's he going on about, you know? But of course, he was just totally ahead of the game, and well-being and all that sort of thing. So there were some really inspiring people whose kind of words, actually, the wisdom of their words became a bit clearer a bit later to me, really.
And I guess it's like a nice incubator where you feel like you can say, oh, this happiness thing, or this philosophy of disposal, and it met with a curiosity.
Yeah.
Than...
Well, that's it. It was before the term was used, it was a safe space, you know, so we spent a lot of time, you know, there was often alcohol involved and late nights, and, you know, people would talk about all sorts of things. It was like a lid was taken off, really, and you could talk about anything, and everything. Some of it nonsense, but actually a lot of it really, really, really stimulating and sort of useful. I think that the thing that, looking back across 20 years, when I started off my first museum director role at Manchester Museum, despite doing the Clore thing, I still found the transition quite difficult, and it, in the sense that it was quite a big leap. I sort of had the confidence to apply, but I hadn't had the experience of actually, you know, leading an organization. So that was took a while, and I think the lessons I learned through doing the Clore, and then that have been sort of amplified through keeping touch with the network, they've played out over a very long period of time. I think when Vivian Duffield sort of set it up, or helped facilitate it, I think the idea was that it would fairly rapidly transform the leadership landscape in the arts and cultural sectors in the UK. I think it's taken a lot longer to do that. And that's for all sorts of reasons. There's lots and lots of extremely good people who didn't do the Clore program, you know, and let's not forget that. Who've done brilliant jobs without that experience. And I think also institutional slowness for change. I think one of the big things we didn't really talk about when I was doing the fellowship was governance and boards. And of course, it's boards who appoint leaders. And sometimes I think the leadership that went through Clore were a bit too scary for some boards, particularly of traditional institutions. It's taken a long time for women leaders to get a place, particularly in museums, you know, and heritage. And certainly, you know, diversity beyond gender was probably not emphasized as much as it should have been 20 years ago. And looking just at the makeup of the 20 or so fellows in my cohort, it wasn't by any means as diverse as the more recent cohorts have been. And I think the leadership program's done a really brilliant job at trying to diversify the pipeline much more. And of course, but that takes a long time to play out, particularly, like, let's say, at the higher profile levels. The other thing, of course, was that many people did the program and they sort of felt, well, I don't want to be director of the chief executive of the Royal Opera House. You know, I'd rather carry on doing my own thing or something I am doing. So I think one of the adjustments that had to be made by many people, including funders, was that not everybody wanted to be a leader of a large arts organization, and leadership comes, of course, at lots and lots of different levels.
Has to come at different levels in order to feed into the conversation. It can't just come from the top. We did a day on governance, which was incredible. So that is in the program, and was, I think, yeah, a lot of us really benefited from having a greater understanding of governance and boards, even if you're already on a board, for instance. So I guess, like, I'm not sure where we are at the time. I think we're rapidly approaching it, but I'm always curious or nosy, depending on how you want to look at it, about the balance of like professional and personal, and like, is there a balance? Is that a fallacy? And how do you maintain like family life with a high status role? And like, what help do you get? And what boundaries have you had to put in place, and sacrifices have you had to make?
Yeah, no, it's a really important question. And I suppose I'm unusual in that Maria also did the Clore program and also has done sort of really demanding roles, particularly now. And I think when we were both moved to roles in Manchester, and she was stronger than me in this, to be fair to her, but she sort of said, well, you know, because people kept talking about work-life balance as if work was one thing and life was another thing. And we were very adamant from the beginning. So it was about work-life integration. In other words, you should make work for your lifestyle. So, you know, we used to take the kids to openings and that sort of thing. And even our dog actually opened one of our exhibitions at Manchester Museum, which was on dogs and dog breeding and things. But, you know, so everybody got to know us as a family in our work context. And the other really important thing, I think, was modeling leadership that wasn't about long hours. So we, apart from a few evening events, which is kind of inevitable, particularly in art galleries and openings and things, we didn't work at weekends. You know, we took holidays. And I'm absolutely, you know, we both ended up where we are, so it hasn't done us any harm. And of course, you model then a way of working that is, you know, see people, there's good work showing it's actually more productive. And now they're working at home at least one day a week. And one of the things that I did learn, which is why, as I said, I've enjoyed being a leader, is that you can set a tone for the organization, which is about making work healthy and fit in with your life. And having the flexibility and sort of humaneness to treat employees with all their individual complexities. So we've been adamant about making it work for us. And when you are kind of, as it were, the boss, you can say, well, that's what I want, I'm afraid, you know. Sometimes, of course, there's pressure to do stuff. And now our kids are grown up, actually, and we do actually have a bit more time. But nevertheless, we don't model really long working out. You know, even if you're doing emails late at night, I always put them on a timer so that they go out in work time. It's just all about those little things about saying it doesn't have to be all consuming. It's important, but we've always said it's not the most important thing in life. And those people for whom work is too all consuming, I think it's to the detriment of their own health, actually. Absolutely vital, you know, to be passionate about work, but put it in perspective, I think.
That's really, just great I'm so glad that that's recorded for other people to hear as well. Because I think, yes, sometimes it does become these split identities, and actually the integration, that word, can help it become healthier and something that nourishes us and feeds.
We've got to make it work for us, you know, whether we're leaders or wherever we are in the organization, you know.
Thank you so much. There are so many other questions and thoughts and swirls around my brain, but this has been such a lovely conversation to have with you, and so enriching. And so thank you for your time.
Well, lovely to meet you, and good luck. You know, I'm sure this will stay with you for the rest of your life. So yeah, let it play out however it plays out, you know.
What you said about time and these things taking more time,
Yeah.
I think that's something that I've had to really hold, as that it doesn't have to be ticked off, and
No.
let it transform.
It's a process. Once a Clore Fellow, always a Clore Fellow.
Indeed.
Yeah. All right.
Oh,
Good
thank
to
you
see
so
you.
much, both. That feels like a really good point to finish on there. But thank you. So many interesting thoughts there, and it's lovely to hear, Nick, the impact that the fellowship has had on you, over the last several years. And also Deanna as well. It's really fresh, from coming out of the fellowship, and you're talking about it, it's still sitting with you, and there's a lot of discovering to happen and do. So that's really great.
That's right.
Awesome. So I hope you enjoyed our chat today. And if you would like to find out more about the 21st anniversary or the work that we do at Clore Leadership, then please do head to our website at cloreleadership.org, and all of the links will be put in the caption below. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.